Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. Week 10, I have your running back rankings right here for you for your friends and family leagues. These are not based on DraftKings salary. They are salary agnostic. For those of you who are daily fantasy players who watch my content and coming over here, this is for your start sit questions, my top 24, my RB1s, my RB2s. If you say, Al, pick two of these three running backs this week that I should start in my friends and family league, pick the two that I have ranked higher. It's very straightforward and simple. Let's get to the rankings. Let's go.
He's a legend.
I appreciate you guys being here. If you would take a second and drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the notifications bell, all of that would be greatly appreciated as I go through these rankings. And week 10 is a very weird week. And it's so weird, in fact, that like once we get to like running back 13, 14, it starts to get really sketchy, like way more so than any other week I've felt this season. So like usually I feel pretty comfortable with these running backs after we get to like running back 20, 21, 22. It really gets bad at the end. So like, please bear with me this week. It's an ugly week. At number 1, Christian McCaffrey. The trade to San Francisco did not stop the McCaffrey train as he just kept rolling along with 27 opportunities in week 8 against the Rams. Now they get to face off against the Chargers, who are one of the best matchups for opposing running backs. I'm not expecting double touchdowns. I never expect multiple touchdowns from any running back, right? Like that's the bonus. You hope that that happens, but no running back in the league has the like floor on volume that Christian McCaffrey presents every single week of the season, and that's just not going to change with Shanahan calling the plays. He is the clear number 1 this week. Also in a great matchup at number 2 is Saquon Barkley squaring off against Houston. The streamers are where we want to go with the running back position, right? So if you have anybody in the top 12, you're starting them every week, but like obviously you should have more confidence and probably have a higher projection next to them based on whatever site that you play on, Yahoo, ESPN, My Fantasy, or whatever it is. Saquon Barkley going to rate very well this week going against Houston, who cannot stop opposing running backs at all. Coming off of a bye week, he is going to be well rested and game plan ready for a team that allows some of the most yards before first contact, not just this year, not just last year, but the year before as well. Houston has not been a good team in terms of tackling, in terms of stopping the run, and the Giants are a very good team at running the football, and Saquon Barkley, one of the best to do it. So obviously you're playing with confidence. He's number 2. Austin Eckler is my number 3 and on pace to break the single season receptions record set a few years ago by Christian McCaffrey because they just have nobody to throw the ball to, with Keenan Allen out the entire season since week 1 essentially, and then Mike Williams being out. They just can't count on Josh Palmer. He's not that good, right? Joshua Palmer is a really good wide receiver 3 in the NFL. He's not very good as an alpha or wide receiver 1. Then there's DeAndre Carter, like Gerald Everett. These are all trickle down guys who do well when there's actual alphas that are soaking up defensive stoppers as well as seeing defenses roll over the top of them, so these guys get to roam around in single coverage or get to find soft spots in zones. So basically Austin Eckler has been peppered with targets. 9 targets in week 9, 12 in week 7, 16 in week 6, and the hits just keep on coming. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen again. San Francisco is a very tough defense, but for PPR scoring, which is what I do my rankings on, Austin Eckler is basically at this point, just like Christian McCaffrey has been, Austin Eckler is the perfect running back with 10 touchdowns so far on the year and multiple touchdowns in 4 of his last 5 games. Now, like, the regression monster might come for Austin Eckler, but he's getting enough usage in the red zone and inside the 5-yard line to at least sustain some of this touchdown scoring as things goes along. As long as he keeps getting this amount of volume, and as long as he keeps getting the leverage volume, the carries inside the 5 and everything else, he's going to continue being an absolute beast. Now, Derrick Henry comes in at number 4 for me just based on opportunity alone. I'm hoping look, I wanted to see Malik Willis because I think Malik Willis is fun. I like running quarterbacks. They're fun to watch. They make the game much more exciting. Also, they can help out their running backs because defenses have to hold. Linebackers, safeties have to hold a beat on that read option. And it makes it very easy for running backs to rip off chunk yards. Problem is, when your quarterback can't throw it at all, like Malik Willis can't throw it like literally at all at this point, at least not at an NFL level, at least not consistently, Tannehill would be the better quarterback. Hopefully he can come back from this ankle injury that he has suffered, and hopefully that offense will move the ball a little bit more consistently, even against a Denver defense that is still going to be strong in spite of trading off Chubb. But it hasn't mattered to Derrick Henry that Willis has been the quarterback. 6.8 yards per rush each of the last 2 games, 2 touchdowns on the ground each of the last 2 games. But the games prior to the game against Kansas City, where he did have 26.5 PPR points, 2 targets in the last 2 games. I greatly prefer the 3, 2, 5, and 6 targets that he had gotten the month before those 2 games when Willis was the starter. We need to get Tannehill back. I think that we could get him back this week. And Derrick Henry is going to continue to roll as long as he keeps getting 25 plus to 30 opportunities every single game. Alvin Kamara needs to see a return to the amount of targets that he was getting before. I believe that they will. 7+ targets a game should be incoming to him with the injuries that they have on the outside. They just can't operate as an offense by ignoring Alvin Kamara. You cannot give him 13 opportunities in a game, especially if you're trailing, as they were against Baltimore for like the entirety of that game. 4 targets is criminal. You cannot do that, New Orleans. So I think a return to 7+ targets, as he saw 10, 9, 9, 6, and 7 the previous 5 games to that debacle against Baltimore. I think that's incoming in that spot. So I think he's just fine there. At number 6, Josh Jacobs, another guy coming off of 2 bad weeks. I told you this is kind of a weird, ugly week. To have Josh Jacobs at number 6 because of the matchup with Indy, coming off of 2 straight weeks where he scored 11.7 fantasy points and 7.4 fantasy points off of like a 3-week stretch that was as good as anybody in the history of fantasy. I think this is a nice bounce back spot. I'm not expecting 30 to 40 fantasy points. I'm also not expecting 5 to 12 fantasy points. His season average is 20.2, but he's been quite the roller coaster along the way. The Raiders are not a great team, but they have 2 guys offensively that they must feed the ball to. One, Devontae Adams, they did last week, and then they kind of went away from giving the ball consistently to Josh Jacobs as the game kind of went along because of how much success they were having in the passing game. Jacobs still had 20 opportunities in that game, which is, he's going to get here on volume, and I love the fact that they have given him 3, 4, 4, 5, 6 targets each of the last 5 games. So Josh Jacobs settles in right there for me based on the matchup, and behind him, I know that some of you are going to have issue with this, right? Because y'all tend to have issues with my rankings from time to time. I prefer home favored running backs against road dog running backs, and that's what Nick Chubb is. So that's why I have Josh Jacobs ahead of Chubb at 6 with Chubb at 7. Miami's defense can be exploited, like it's possible, but they do not project to be playing from ahead in this one. I think that they're going to have to throw the ball to be effective. That's why we've seen players like DPJ do really well. It's a road game, so maybe Amari Cooper isn't going to do anything. And the return of David Njoku, I think that this is going to be a game where they're clearly going to run the ball because it's the Browns and that's what they do. But Chubb not getting very many targets at all. Chubb very reliant on touchdowns. Thankfully, he's very good at scoring them with 6 touchdowns on the ground in their last 5 games and a touchdown in every game but 2 so far this season. But Josh Jacobs has that same sort of touchdown expectancy and more work in the passing game. So a higher median projection for Jacobs. Chubb as high a ceiling as anybody, and we've seen the same ceiling from Jacobs as well. So that's why I have Chubb ranked at 7 behind Jacobs. Dalvin Cook is coming off of a couple of really good games. He's just a really good running back. Now, he squares off against Buffalo, but this game is up in the air. So I have him here at 8, and here's why. Josh Allen may not play in this game. He's went for a second opinion. Second opinions are never great. If you went to get a second opinion, it means that you're not happy with the first opinion. The first opinion had to be something along the lines of, you need Tommy John surgery, you need to shut it the hell down, right? That, I'm guessing that's not like, that's speculative on my behalf, but like when you go for a second opinion, not great, Bob. So like if you take Josh Allen off of that Buffalo offense, that offense is no longer very good, and that spread is going to shift massively. And Dalvin Cook's been very, very, very good. I really like that. I pleaded for this, right? It's the same cadence for me every single week, right? If you have a running back who can catch the football, throw that running back the football. That's great. That's more efficient. That helps us a lot in fantasy. 6 targets in each of the last 2 games for Dalvin Cook, 13.6, 28.1 fantasy points in those 2 games, following 4 games where he got 1, 2, 2, and 0 targets. Now, granted, one of those games he did break off a 20-yard touchdown, and he went for 26 points in week 5 against Chicago. But Chicago's a very exploitable defense, specifically against running backs, one of the teams we like to stream against. So not surprising that he had a big game there. But Dalvin Cook averaging 16.2 PPR points per game. I love the usage in the passing game, and I'm going to stick with him. Somebody else that I want to see more targets for is Travis Etienne Jr. Normalized Travis Etienne Jr. getting 5+ targets per game. They've been feeding him the ball like he's old school Derrick Henry. If you look at Cordero Patterson's game log from 2021, right, he kind of is following that usage chart, where early in the year he was doing really well. Cordell Patterson, 2021. Not a lot of snaps, but a lot of usage in the red zone and a lot of usage in the passing game. Then they said, okay, you're our starter, and they stopped throwing him the football. And the same thing has kind of happened with Travis Etienne Jr. In the 2 games where he logged over 20 opportunities, the only 2 that he had over 20 opportunities this year were week 8 against Denver, week 9 against Las Vegas. In week 8, he had 27 opportunities, only 3 targets in a game that they lost. And against Las Vegas, 28 carries, 30 opportunities, 2 targets? It's not enough for a guy who thrives in the passing game. This is who he is. He should not be getting like 2-3 targets a game. 5+ will help that offense massively, and will make us as fantasy managers less reliant on him getting a 48-yard gain on the ground by pounding Travis Etienne between the tackles. Just not a great recipe for success, at least not long-term, or at least not sustainably for us, where we want that really high median floor with an equally high ceiling because of his big playability. Right now, they're turning him into a running back that could score like 8-9 points if he just has like 80 total yards and no touchdowns in a game, and that's not what we want. If he has 85 total yards, he should also have like 4 catches, giving us a floor in PPR of 12 fantasy points. It's a big difference. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a big difference. Ken Walker comes in behind him at 10. Ken Walker had 4 targets last week. That's more than Travis Etienne Jr. got last week. He also had 30.9 fantasy points, 100 yards in 2 of the last 3 games, a touchdown in each of the last 5. Now, far be it from me to say that Ken Walker III is a touchdown-dependent running back, but he's kind of a touchdown-dependent running back, if you know what I mean, because he's not getting an awful lot of targets in the passing game. I want to see that improve before we can rank him any higher, but he's been stellar doing what he does, which is being a workhorse, running the hell out of the football. I love that little hop move that he uses when he gets around the edge. Like, he does this little jump because he knows everybody's going to go for his legs. It's different. No other running back seems to utilize that little move. It's not like a full hurdle. It's just like this little spring off the ground, like he's Super Mario Bro or something. It's great. Love it. Dameon Pierce comes in behind him, proving that you don't need to be a running back on a good team to pile up points. Now, as I've said for years, volume over everything. And Dameon Pierce is getting a ton of volume on a team that is playing from behind literally all the time. 148 attempts on the ground, has only scored 4 touchdowns. That's a product of being on a bad team. But through 8 games, 24 targets. This is really great. Obviously, last week against Philadelphia, they stood no chance. He still ran the ball 27 times for 139 yards. Very efficient. 5.1 yards on the ground, now squares off against the Giants. Another good defense, not as good as the Philadelphia Eagles, but the last few games he's been very steady, averaging 16 fantasy points per game, 17 last game, 14.1, 15.7. It has been since week 2, the first week that he saw expanded usage, where he had under 10 fantasy points in any game. So solid PPR work, even though he got no targets last week. 5, 4, 5, and 6, the trailing games before that. Rounding out the top 12, my final RB1 on the week is going to be Miles Sanders. I feel like I'm the president of the Miles Sanders fan club, or at least I have been all off season, because I had to fight through, like, I'm like Jon Snow with the sword, with all the horses coming his way, where everybody said Miles Sanders he can't score touchdowns. They just don't give him the ball. He doesn't score touchdowns. He's bad in short yardage. He's got touchdowns in 4 of the last 5. He's got 6 touchdowns on the year, following 0 last year. Because like future results are not predictive by past results all the time. It's more about the volume that he's getting. And this year he's seen more carries inside the 10, more work in the red zone, more work inside the 5, but not getting any usage in the passing game. It's just not how they utilize their backs, and it's not how they utilize Miles Sanders, because while we think he should be good in the passing game, he's got 1 target the last 3 games. They just don't throw him the ball. That's not how they're going to utilize him. But he has been very efficient at running the football and has touchdown upside with, 15 fantasy points per game, and 1 game in the last 5 where he scored less than 13.8 PPR points. Even though he's not getting a ton of targets thrown his way, very efficient running back on a team where there's so many other threats around that he just kind of gets to run around, roam, and be free. The first running back that I'm going to put in here as my RB2, I am going to project a little bit here. Okay, I'm going to project that Ezekiel Elliott is not going to play this week with the knee injury that he suffered, the bone bruise, the PCL sprain, whatever you want to call it, whatever they're dictating that it was. They got to let him get healthy, and Tony Pollard ripped off like 131 on the ground, and he has been their best running back this year on a big play basis. He is also the knock on Tony Pollard, right? These have been the knocks on Tony Pollard. He can't run between the tackles, provably false by the way that they've utilized him this year, and he's not as good a pass blocker as Ezekiel Elliott. However, PFF, not PPR, PFF has him graded as a much better pass blocker, specifically in 2022. So like the narrative has to change there, that Tony Pollard can't block against the pass rush, because based on the people who actually watch all the games and grade everybody, they've shown that Tony Pollard has shown great improvement along those lines in that particular aspect and is doing much better. I think he's like a top 15 back in terms of pass blocking this year, and Ezekiel Elliott's like the 35th best back. So that spiel being said, Tony Pollard, if Ezekiel Elliott is out, slides in right here. Like even that last game, right, against Chicago, that's a great matchup. Green Bay also a really good matchup, but it's on the road versus at home. They are favored in that one, but only 15 touches. They just may not want to give Tony Pollard more than 15 touches. They don't want to have him wear down. He is a smaller back than Ezekiel. Maybe he can't handle that sort of pounding, and I understand that, but he is a very efficient back, and if he does get you 15 to 20 touches, hopefully more in the passing game than on the ground, again, if they're trying to save him pounding, get him the ball in space in the passing game, that's where he greatly excels. 36.7 points last game. Easy number 13 running back for me here. Now, this is where I said it's going to start to fall apart. Okay, I feel really confident in Tony Pollard. And then after him, it's somebody else that I do feel confident about. But Cordarrelle Patterson slides into this spot, coming off of a 14 opportunity performance where he ran for 2 touchdowns. He's got a touchdown in 4 of the 5 games that he's played this year, which is on a team that wants to run the hell out of the ball in Carolina, allowing over 100 yards on the ground to opposing running backs. You know that Arthur Smith is going to establish it. The question is, are they going to give Cordarrelle 20 touches here? Are they going to keep giving Algier 10 to 15 touches, even though he's back? He got 11 opportunities last week. They still gave Caleb Huntley 7 carries last week with all 3 of them. It's a hot mess. And then obviously Marcus Mariota is going to run the ball a little bit too. Cordarrelle is the main running back in that situation. But like, guys, it's falling apart. It's really falling apart. Behind him, Leonard Fournette at number 15. Now, the Tampa Bay offense has been really bad this year. Leonard Fournette, playing less snaps than he has before, has not seen 10 carries in a game since week 6. It's not like Rachaad White's taking over like all of the work. We saw 10 targets the last 2 games in total from Leonard Fournette. They're still utilizing him in the passing game, and Seattle is an exploitable defense. The problem is, can this Tampa Bay offense be one that exploits, right? So you have the penetrable object against the very movable force in the Tampa Bay offense at this point. So I'm hoping that Leonard Fournette is the best case here. He is, based on what's behind him, and my exuberance about his pass catching ability, or at least the trust that Tom Brady has in him in leverage situations where they need to get first downs. He definitely goes to Leonard Fournette a ton. Let's see if Leonard Fournette can find his way into the end zone, because he's only got 1 touchdown in the last 3 games after a really big start to the season. Now everybody's back. This Tampa Bay offense has to start moving. This is the week for them to get healthy and build off of that game-winning drive against the Rams in week 9. Aaron Jones is coming off of an injury, so clearly monitor this one as the week goes along. They're expecting him to be fine. Negative X-ray results, should be able to play this week. Massive games and then floor games. He is a roller coaster this season based on the way that they're running that offense. You have coach and quarterback feuding. They have nobody to throw the ball to on the outside. Aaron Jones has not taken the bulk of the work. We need Aaron Jones to get like 15 to 20% of the target market share. There's just nobody that can command it on the outside. And now they've got injuries to Romeo Doubs, and they've had injuries where Alan Lazard came back from last week. And it's a hot mess, right? Aaron Rodgers wants to simplify things on offense. Great. Here's how you simplify things. Let Aaron Jones have over 20 opportunities every single game. Now, hopefully that ankle injury that he suffered last week allows him to come back here. He would be number 16, but kind of has an arrow. And then behind him, I've got Jamal Williams. Now, Williams, one of the league leaders in terms of inside the 5 carries, something that I absolutely love. Great matchup here against Chicago. That's where we want to stream running backs. We've seen the last 2 weeks that DeAndre Swift has come back to action, but last week against Green Bay, 24 carries for Jamal. So I don't think that they're all that, they don't believe that Swift is 100% ready. Swift only had 2 attempts last week and 4 targets. 5 attempts the week before with 5 targets. It makes ranking these 2 guys an impossibility. But right now, I have Jamal Williams ahead of Swift, even though I believe that Swift is a much better running back than Jamal Williams. If he's not ready, sit him out and just roll with that. It's not like you're winning anything this year, but coach is going to do what the coach is going to do. So Jamal Williams slides in this spot for me at number 17, just ahead of Deontay Foreman, playing against Atlanta, a team that has been very exploitable, right? Like on the ground, through the air. Foreman has been good in 2 of the 3 games since the Christian McCaffrey trade. 3 touchdowns for him in week 8. Chuba Hubbard's status remains up in the air. Even if Hubbard is back, I think that they have to go to Foreman here. They just got throttled last week. 4.1 fantasy points for him in that game where Joe Mixon had 4 million fantasy points. They were going to play from behind in that one. Atlanta's going to limit the speed of this game. Carolina also probably going to limit the speed of this game. Not going to be a lot of plays. It's a perfect, ugly Thursday night game because that's what Thursday night games do tend to be. So Foreman slides in this spot. Behind him, David Montgomery on the other side of that Detroit game. Detroit has done a lot to amplify the fantasy goodness of any running backs that play against him. But this is now a 2.5-headed monster when it comes to running the football for Chicago. We have Fields, who's going to get his 10 attempts a game on average, maybe 11, right? I know he ran it more than that last week, but like there's games he's going to run at 8. I think that they're going to try to run the ball, the Bears, let's say 40 to 45 times a game. 15 of those are going to go to David Montgomery. Another 15 of those probably are going to go to like Khalil Herbert. Let's say between 9 and 14 are going to go to Herbert. Another 10 are going to go to Fields. And who knows which one scores the touchdown. It's not like they're using David Montgomery at all in the passing game. He has 6 targets over the last 4 games. It's just like, guys, it's really ugly. I'm sorry. I apologize for all of the running backs that are in the rest of this list. Behind David Montgomery at 19, at number 20, I have DeAndre Swift. I already talked to you about how horrible his usage has been. If he's hurt, let him sit. If he's not ready, let him sit. Because giving him 10 or less opportunities a game because you're monitoring him and managing him through this injury is a big mistake in a season where you're not going to make the playoffs. I know that it's a very prideful coach. I know that it's a tough guy approach that they go with in Detroit based on the coaching staff that they have. And if you're ready, you got to tough it out and you got to be a man and all, but like, you know what? Let the dude get right. And use the other running backs that you have, because DeAndre Swift is not making a difference in you winning games this year, but he could down the road. So like, I have to rank him on potential, but it's so thin. Speaking of being very thin, behind him, we have Antonio Gibson. I told you guys, it's not great. It's like, this week is such a stupid week. Squaring off against Philadelphia in Philadelphia against that defensive line and a mismatch for the offensive line and defensive line. He's seen increased usage, 14 opportunities each of the last 3 weeks. If JD McKissick is out, we should probably see, say, a more of a floor and possible ceiling in terms of his pass game usage in a game that they do project to play from behind. So best case scenario for Antonio Gibson is that McKissick stays out in this spot, which right now he's questionable. We just don't know what his status is going to be with the neck injury that he sat out the previous week with. But guys, it just is what it is. But because of the pass game usage, I have to play him directly or rank him directly ahead of my number 21 running back, and that's Raheem Mostert, because of the addition. See, like I told you guys, it's bad. This week is so bad. Raheem Mostert, love the matchup. We want to play running backs against Cleveland. That's like, if you had Mostert on your roster, you should have been thrilled with this spot. Unfortunately, he only got 11 opportunities last week in a game where Jeff Wilson Jr. got 12. We may now have a 50-50 split in terms of running back snaps and touches. It's not like Wilson Jr. looked bad. 5.7 on the ground, caught 3 balls, the 3 that were headed his way against Chicago. Chicago was a dream matchup as well, but like, you're going to get maybe, like before we were getting 15, 16, 17 touches, 20 opportunities in week 7 against Pittsburgh for Mostert, 21 in week 5 for Mostert. I don't know if we clear 15 opportunities for Mostert now or moving forward. So just an ugly timeshare, nasty situation, exactly what we want to avoid at running back. Najee Harris comes in for me here. Just a lost season for him in terms of fantasy players. If you're in Dynasty and you have Harris, or if you paid a top first round pick, I think he was going around 7 to 10 in terms of his ADP pretty much all summer. He was in a void for us on this channel, and he's showing why no more than 14.1 PPR points in any game this year, averaging 11.1, 14 touches, 14 opportunities and touches in his last game, 21 opportunities the game before that. So volume's not really a problem, but efficiency has been awful. The quarterback play has really sunk him on top of the bad offensive line play in Pittsburgh. They square off against New Orleans, who are probably going to be in a really angry mood after getting embarrassed against Baltimore on that island game this week. And behind him, James Conner squares out the list. On the road against the Rams, James Conner, I was watching that game, got good enough volume in his first game back from injury against Seattle, scored 11.4 fantasy points. The best part about it was the 5 targets that we saw headed his way, 12 total opportunities. When half of those come through the air, it leads to a much higher floor, but the Rams, a very tough defense, even though offensively they've been really, really struggling. I don't know if we're going to see 20 opportunities from James Conner in a game that they project to play from behind, but hopefully they're throwing and James Conner can maintain that PPR floor that he has, but a ceiling game here seems really, really difficult considering he has 1 touchdown on the year, and that came in week 1. Now coming off of the rib injuries that he had, they may monitor and limit his usage and split the time probably in a 60-40 manner with Eno Benjamin. Thank you guys for watching. Look out for another video right there.
He's a legend.